So I'm going to get started while everyone sort of settles in and people can join in and we'll get going. I'd like to welcome everybody to our Zoom meeting today. I have an echo here, so it's weird. But glad to have you on board. We're wanted to not break our string of bus tours with 25 plus years. I don't know if Bob's on the call, but I think Bob's on the call. Hi, Bob. A few things to do while we, ground rules while we set up this meeting. The first thing is, as you board the bus, please keep your hands and arms inside the bus. Please stay in your seats while the bus is moving and wait till the bus comes to a complete stop at each site. We're going to mute everybody during the presentations, but we do have a 5-minute Q&A time, hopefully. After each presentation, it will unmute you. And Martha and Dana are going to keep an eye on the chat for me, so thank you. So that'll be your way to interact. Grab your coffee and donuts. I think I don't need to tell you where your restroom is. You need to know where that is. Feel free to get up and have a donut during our presentation. So I wanted to thank all of our presenters today. It was extra work to put together a virtual presentation, and all of us worked kind of last minute to do that, so I appreciate it. And I'm really glad to have everybody on board. We have everything from master watershed stewards, environmental educators, folks working in all different ways in the watershed, and so we're glad to have all of you on board. Here's our trip today. So for our tour, we're down here at the Myrick Conservation Center. We're starting here today. We're going to travel 16 miles with Corey and Craig up to the Hibernia County Park, and we're going to learn about flood control at the Hibernia Dam. After that, we're going to travel with David Wise through the west branch of the Red Clay Creek, looking at riparian watershed plantings, and end up back in Kennett. So David Wise from Stroud Water Research will be our presenter. From there, we're going down to South Wilmington Wetland, project we've heard about. I went to go see it, and it's hard to see from the road. So Martha's got some aerial footage. This project is actually in the ground now. So it's a teaser. We hope to get out there physically in maybe 2021. From there, we're heading over to Tom's place at SUEZ. That's Newcastle, I think, or Newport. And we're going to have a tour of SUEZ. We need to remind ourselves that so much of the work we do is for drinking water, and that's what resonates with our folks. From there, we're coming up to Plum Run on Tighe Road back in Westchester, and we're going to finish back here so you can get in your cars and your commute back home. So we're going to cover 80 miles. Ignore the 2 hours and 35 minutes because this is a magic school bus ride. We're going to do it all in 90 minutes. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Corey Trigo and Craig at Chester County Water Authority, and they are going to take over the screen and do the presentation on Hibernia.
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much, Brian. Let's see if this will work. All right. Can you guys see that? Good. Okay, great. Awesome. So I'm going to start off this presentation. I'm Corey Trego. I'm a water resources planner with the Chester County Water Resources Authority. We're going to be talking a little bit today about flood protection, Chester County, and kind of the legacy of this Brandywine Creek watershed work plan. So just a quick highlight. First off, so CCWRA, who are we? Discuss a little bit about the Brandywine Creek work plan. I'll review CCWRA's flood control dams. And then Craig Thomas, who's our field operations and field engineering operations manager, he will go over the current rehab project at Hibernia Dam at Hibernia County Park. So a real brief background of who CCWRA is. We were formed back in 1961 by the Board of Commissioners, kind of to oversee flood control and water resources management for Chester County. So we're the county agency in charge of those things. This was really kind of spurred on by the Brandywine Creek work plan. What we do today is we do reservoir water supply and stream flow management. We monitor streams throughout the county in partnership with the USGS. and publish information about those water conditions. We work with municipalities on reducing stormwater runoff and pollution reduction. And then we also provide regional flood protection and flood monitoring, which is what we'll talk about today. So this kind of all started back with the Brandywine Creek Work Plan, which was published in 1962. The goal of the plan was to address the growing water supply needs and flooding concerns that were happening throughout Chester County. In the 1950s, there were a couple severe floods that had major impacts in Coatesville and Downingtown, and several other smaller communities along the east and west branch of the Brandywine, and also on the main stem. Also with the growing population in Chester County and in the broader Brandywine Creek watershed, there was concerns about long-term water supply. They had a couple severe droughts again in the 40s and 50s, and it kind of heightened this awareness that we need to do long-term planning to make sure we have sustainable water supply and then good flood control management for the future. So the Brandywine Creek Work Plan originally called for the construction of 10 different flood control reservoirs and water supply reservoirs. You can kind of see those highlighted throughout the map here. But ultimately, only 4 of the 10 that were originally planned were constructed, and a 5th one, Hibernia Dam, was constructed at the end of this. It was not originally planned. So STRUBLE Dam and Lake is owned by CCWRA up in the headwaters of the west branch of the Brandywine. Barneston, or I guess that's the east branch of the Brandywine. Barneston Dam, east branch of the Brandywine, a little bit further downstream there. Beaver Creek Dam is located on Beaver Creek, which is a tributary to the east branch of the Brandywine. And then Hibernia Dam and Chambers Lake is located on Birch Run, located at Hibernia County Park. And then Marsh Creek Dam and Lake was also constructed. CCWRA worked with the NRCS to oversee the construction of this dam. However, right now the state, through DCNR, oversees the operation and maintenance of the dam at Marsh Creek State Park. So our first dam is going to be Struble Dam and Struble Lake. Struble Lake is about a 160-acre impoundment located behind Struble Dam. You guys can see the dam down here at the bottom of the screen. Just kind of a good drone image here. You can see the principal spillway, the overflow from the lake comes right through here. The dam breast is across here, and our auxiliary spillway. So if water rose over 2 feet in elevation in this impoundment, it would flow over this auxiliary spillway. We've never actually had water flow over that auxiliary spillway since the dam was created back in 1970. You can see kind of the principal riser back here. So water is continually flowing over into this riser and outlets down into the headwaters of the east branch of the Brandywine on the downstream end of this dam. As I said, this dam, it's managed by the Fish and Boat Commission for Recreation, but one of its primary purposes was also flood control. So just a month or so ago, we had Tropical Storm Isaias. This dam led to the retention of 58 million gallons of floodwater. But that kind of pales in comparison to October 9th of 2005. The maximum flood detention at this site was 156 million gallons. That's 156 million gallons of floodwater that is prevented from going downstream and flooding communities and roadways downstream of this dam. Our next stop will be Beaver Creek Dam in East Branch Brandywine, or in East Brandywine Township. Beaver Creek is a tributary again to the east branch of the Brandywine Creek. Beaver Creek Dam was completed in 1974, designed primarily for flood control. It has a total flood storage capacity of 170 million gallons. You can see the dam breast running here. Our risers, this is our principal spillway. Water would flow over this riser, exit down into Beaver Creek at the bottom of the dam breast. Our auxiliary spillway comes along the side here. This is actually Applecross development in the background, but CCWRA currently owns this area in the 11-acre area that is impounded by this Beaver Creek Dam. Just another aerial imagery of the flood pool that was located behind Beaver Creek Dam. As you can see, in the summer months, we would get a lot of algal growth. A lot of nutrients and sediment washing upstream were kind of held back behind this dam. Again, the primary purpose of this was flood detention. Tropical Storm Isaias 92 million gallons of water retained. But back on May 1st in 2014, we had a max flood detention of 155 million gallons. And you can see the morning of, I think it was October, or the morning of August 3rd, the riser looked like this picture on the before. The day after, you could not even see that riser. It was basically completely submerged. The water had risen that high. And this is the primary outlet down below on the 4th in the afternoon. BARNESTON Dam is located in Wallace Township. It's our dam currently only operated as a dry dam, so it only backs up water during a flood situation. Completed in 1983, and it can store 511 million gallons of floodwaters. As you can see right now, basically behind there is a bunch of vegetation growing. But in a flood situation, water backs up because only a certain amount can actually go through that principal spillway. Tropical storm Isaias, we had 134 million gallons that were detained, but back on October 9th of 2005, we had 290 million gallons. We approached that level on May 1st, 2014. We didn't quite get to that level, but you can see how much water is detained behind this dam when you have a flooding event. So again, this is on the east branch of the Brandywine Creek, preventing this water from moving downstream and impacting Downingtown communities down further below. Our final dam is on Birch Run in the west branch of the Brandywine Creek, located in West Callan Township. This is our most recently completed dam, completed in 1994. It's HIBERNIA Dam, and then Chambers Lake is a 90-acre impoundment behind it. It has a total flood storage capacity of 257 million gallons. This dam, there is access for the public. You can get out there, you can recreate on the lake. It's a really beautiful spot throughout the entire year. Tropical storm Isaias, we had 80 million gallons of floodwaters that were detained behind this dam. So I'm going to turn this over now to Craig Thomas, and he's going to wrap up with discussing the current rehab project that is going on at HIBERNIA. So Craig, go ahead and share your screen and take that away.
Thank you, Corey. Good morning, everybody. My name is Craig Thomas. And as Corey mentioned, we currently have a rehab project underway at HIBERNIA Dam at Hibernia County Park up in the Upper West Branch Brandywine Creek Watershed. I wanted to start off, I could take all 5 minutes to talk about our federal sponsor, but we're very fortunate to have worked with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Natural Resources Conservation Service. They've been wonderful to work with. We qualified for a grant through their Dams Rehabilitation Program, and that has provided us support for planning, design, and now into construction. And that's including both some financial support as well as technical support and administrative support. So I just wanted to highlight just how wonderful it's been to have USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service as a partner. The design firm for the job is Gannett Fleming, and the construction company is out of Bucks County. It's KC Construction from Warminster, and they've been wonderful to work with as well. The goals that we had here were to address some items that needed to be resolved so that the dam met modern dam safety standards. Here's a photo of the dam before construction started. This is back in June. And we have here in the foreground, we have the embankment. And as Corey remarked, we have the auxiliary spillway here at HIBERNIA Dam. And those are the two areas where our work is focused on. Our principal spillway is through this riser outletting in this impact basin. So our principal spillway is here, auxiliary spillway is here, and the embankment is here. The 4 areas that are worked on include the auxiliary spillway and 3 areas here along the embankment. And that includes a concrete cutoff wall being built here in the auxiliary spillway, grading of the bench on the downstream slope, installation of a filtered rock toe to improve our drainage at the toe of the dam, and an extension of an existing maintenance drive so that we were able to get equipment over to our impact basin and to our valve vaults. So again, here we are about 2 weeks after the project started. And although you can't see it from this photograph, the dam is basically surrounded on 3 sides by woods and the 4th side by water. So our contractor came up with a very creative solution to install a temporary haul road down the slope of the dam. We routed this through Pennsylvania DEP and the County Conservation District and the township, and we got approval from all three. And it was a fantastic solution to allow work to continue down in this area. You can also see here in June that we have some excavation underway in the slope and the bit of the control section of our auxiliary spillway. Here we are a couple weeks later, and at this point they're working on installing a dewatering system down here at the toe so that they can control water and allow the filter to be installed properly. You can also see some ENS controls being installed, and although slightly off screen, a little more excavation here at the concrete cutoff wall. Here we are into July, and we have the beginnings of our rock filter toe, and I have some close-up photos of that in a moment. The dewatering system is right here. That is in place and operating. That dewatering system used the same materials and the same design as the filter toe. So this actually became an extension of the filter toe. It was left in place when the toe was built. So here we are in August. The dewatering system remains as part of the filter toe as it extends across the toe of the dam. This toe is probably about 250 to 300 feet in length. And you can begin to see our extension of our maintenance drive coming in and grading on the bench. This is just on Wednesday. We're beginning final seeding and stabilization of the disturbed areas. You can see this area is already starting to see some grass pop. The extension of our maintenance drive and our rock filter toe is now complete. If I had waited a few hours, this entire area would have been netted for permanent seeding. So that's our most recent photo. And now just to give you some quick shots of the work, this is our cutoff wall. The embankment is in the background part, pardon me. The reason for installing this concrete cutoff wall is that we have excellent bedrock, fairly shallow across this control section. However, this part of the auxiliary spillway, the bedrock was a little deeper, about 6 to 7 feet deeper. So we needed to put in a concrete cutoff wall so that if water flows, or when water flows from the lake downstream, that there won't be any problems with erosion cutting back into the auxiliary spillway and causing any kind of breach. So that's the purpose of this. So the first thing we did is bring it down to bedrock and clean it up, and then poured in some backfill concrete to provide a level surface for the work to take advantage of. Next was the installation of the footer, and we have about 4 tons of reinforcing steel being installed in this wall and about 135 yards of concrete. So here's the footer being formed, and then they brought in a pumper with a couple of concrete trucks, and they began to pump the concrete in and form the footer. And you can see the guys working there to form the footer up, and some of the reinforcing steel that will make the vertical portion of the wall, which is the next phase. So now we have our footer down here at the bottom, and we have the reinforcing steel going up here. You can see this is probably about 15 feet tall, and you can see a form on this wall, and they're going to start putting the form up on this wall. And then the next thing is to pour the concrete in, and now we have a concrete cutoff wall, and this will be in line with the existing geometry of the channel. So at the end of the day, this will all be backfilled in, reseeded, stabilized, and all we'll see at the very top is just the top of the edge of the concrete cutoff wall. Otherwise, it'll all be buried and basically seamless from the public's point of view. The next area is the bench. We used to have a reverse slope on the bench, which caused some ponding. So a minor fix was just to make this a positive drainage. So water will come down the slope, be intercepted before it picks up too much speed, and then sheet flow down into our rock filtered toe. This is probably the biggest project of the 4 components. The goal here was to take off about a foot of soil to get rid of all the grass and roots, and then to apply fine drain material and coarse drain material to provide additional drainage of any seepage or any water moving through the dam. We have existing drains, but we wanted to supplement those with this new rock filter toe. So what we have here is 3 zones. The bottom is the fine drainage material, basically sand. It's at least a foot deep. Next is the coarse drain material, and on top of that is R5 riprap to keep everything in place. compacting everything, multiple tests to make sure everything was done properly. So here we have the filter toe across the bottom. You can see the maintenance drive coming in now. So we now have access to our outlet and to our valve vault and the bench being regraded. Again, I'll close just by thanking the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service for all their support and the great partners we've had with Ganna Fleming and KC Construction. At this point, we'll take any questions.
I had a question on the permanent seeding, just for quizzical. It looks like a turf, like a ryegrass or something on there, or orchard grass. Would you guys use for the permanent seeding?
Yeah, for the dams, we use a mix of a triple ryegrass and a fescue. So the ryegrass will have 3 varieties, 3 species, I guess, and then the fescue will be there. I believe it's an annual rye. So an annual rye to get quick ground cover, and then the fescue for the long term.
Right. Is that maintained like 3 times a year or more than that, or how's it maintained?
At Hibernia, we mow it at least 4 times a year. And occasionally, if it's a particularly wet year, we'll mow it a 5th time.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yep. Please feel free to follow up with Corey or myself if you have any other questions about us. I realize we ran a little late, so we should probably respect the other presenters.
Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, thank you very much, Craig. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Corey. Did you unshare your screen? Good.
Yes, it should be unshared.
So thanks, Craig and Corey. I think one advantage of the virtual bus tour is we got to see 5 sites and cover things we would not normally have been able to see over a period of construction. So awesome. Thank you. Next up, we're going to do our virtual bus ride over to the Red Clay with David Wise. And I want to thank David from Stroud Water Research. We're pulling up the screen. I'm going to run the slides for you, David. And then Dana, if you don't mind muting everybody. So we have just gone over into the Red Clay. And David, take it away.
All right, thanks, Brian. And I hope your heart rate's returning to normal after a rough morning. I didn't envy you. So I'm David Wise. I work for Stroud Water Research Center, and I'll share with you some work that's going on in the West Branch of the Red Clay. Give you a sense of where we are. Here's Willowdale with the Conservation District, Unionville, and then Stroud Center itself is located just off the slide down here in the bottom. It's not a big area. It's maybe 2 miles across and 3 miles north to south, something of that scale. And you can advance. Here's a map of the same area, schematic. We're working on forested buffers as a primary task in the watershed for stream health and other benefits. The green shows areas that have an existing tree cover. What's shown is there is a 100-foot width per side, so 200-foot corridor. So a lot of the area does have some existing cover, which is great. The blue areas, that's the areas that we've done just in the last couple of years. One here right below 926. That's about 45 acres of buffers put in there in the last year, including that yellow area that's now installed. The pink areas that you see up here in the northwest and the headwaters and in the central part, that's slated for construction this coming spring of 21. And then you'll see some red highlighted areas. That's future needs, largely with the new Bolton Vet Center that we're hoping to get some participation on. So next. Just real quick, I don't need to drag you through all the numbers, but just look at the totals at the bottom. It's been really gratifying and humbling to have the kind of landowner buy-in and support. We are putting in gold standard buffers that are more than 100 feet per side on average in some really high-priced real estate. We'll be putting in 92 acres of buffers in these 2 years on about 7.5 miles of stream. So the landowner support and cooperation has been really, really gratifying. Next. Stroud is a research facility, and one of the privileges that I have working there is as we do watershed restoration projects and buffers, we have a chance to overlay some research questions and ask how we can do these projects better. So working at cutting costs, reducing the need for herbicide, and improving success, we put some trials into these West Branch red clay projects that were installed in spring. First being the idea of using stone mulch as an alternative to herbicide for protecting trees from rodent damage. A second one is testing out a new tree shelter that's on the market, a little bit cheaper. See if we can save some money, see if the thing works as well as it needs to. Use of pressure treated oak stakes. We've had a lot of stake failures that make for an awful lot of maintenance and maintenance cost. And then we're looking at whether we can reduce our mowing on buffers. We mow 3 times per year for 4 years on most of our buffer projects. And that cost amounts to about half the cost of the overall project for that, including the installation. So it's a major cost. We want to see if we can reduce that cost. Next. So a couple of years ago, we started in on a second generation of trials of this idea of stone mulch. The 36-inch herbicide spot has been an industry standard for about 2 decades now as a great way to have success with tree shelters, with buffer plantings with tree shelters. We're looking at the use of 2A modified stone. That's a mix of stone sizes from dust up through about 3/4 inch diameter maximum particle size. First trials we put in used about 20-inch by 2-inch coverage. That's about 40 pounds. That's a lot of stone. We also then wanted to look at, could we get away with less stone? The 12-inch diameter by 2 inches deep, that's about 20 pounds, so about half the amount of stone. Next. So the data for 2 years, just ignore the green, that's year 1 data. Let's look at the blue bars, year 2 data. This is survivorship. And what we saw through 2 years is that there was no real difference. There is no statistically significant difference. There's maybe a tendency towards the stone actually having higher survivorship, but nothing statistically significant. Next. In other words, it's working. Growth-wise, we did see a statistically significant impact there. The stone mulch is not growing the trees quite as fast. You can see the blue bars again. This is 2-year data. It's not a big tail off, but it is statistically significant. That's something to be aware of. In my own opinion, we have many trees that are wrecking themselves on our projects because they're growing too fast, that I'm of the opinion that slowing them down a bit is to their best interest. I'm content with that, but I'll put it out there. It's real. There is a drop off, and that's increased competition for nutrients, increased competition for moisture, and light. And the stones really are not to suppress the vegetation. There is vegetation that will come up through there, but the stones are very specifically there to keep the voles from chewing up the roots and the stems of the trees and killing them. Next. And it's working. So what was different in the West Branch is this was our first time that we are working at scale. You know, we've been doing trials, but this is our first deployment at scale. We're doing more than 50 acres of trees, of buffers with the stone mulch. And as Murphy's Law would have it, we had our first unintended test of the durability of stone mulch. Some areas of the watershed, it was reported to me that it was more than a 500-year event. Still working on that detail. I'm happy to report back that of the acres that we had installed to that point, only about 5% were harmed. The stone was washed away. Most of it stayed in place, so that was some good news. We'll also be testing this stone mulch idea in the West Branch on areas with reed canary grass, which is a very tall, very highly competitive, very aggressive grass that can be a real problem for establishing trees. So we'll give it the acid test. Next. So this is one of the projects. This is more than 100 feet wide on this wide floodplain, probably 150, 180 feet wide. Those brown blobs that you see, that is flood debris that has accumulated at the base of each of those shelters. And that's fine, Brian, we can stay there. Why are we looking at this? Number one, we want to cut down the herbicide use. And number two, we want to cut down on the cost. So we're running about 1/3 the cost to do stone mulch as compared to 4 years worth of twice-a-year herbicide applications. And it's just a lot less mobilizations. You can put it in and be done with it. Grants come and go, and to be done with a project without having ongoing 4 years of commitments for mobilizations is a nice thing. Next. We also are testing some tree shelters. The shore green, the far right, is a new shelter that's on the market. I have tested shelters now for a decade and a half. I believe it's probably the holy grail of riparian buffer work, because I've yet to find any statistically significant differences among shelters, among the leading shelter types in terms of performance. And maybe that's understandable given that in these high growth environments, the trees are only in those tubes for a season, maybe 2 seasons for the slow growers. So it's just doesn't seem to be having an enormous effect on growth rate in the longer term. We do think there's some cost savings to be had. Shore green is a bit cheaper. Next. And then switching gears from buffers to working with farmers who are doing tillage operations, or sorry, doing cropping operations in the watershed. Jamie Hicks works an awful lot of the land in the west branch of the red clay. We've worked with Jamie to help incent him and enable him to both put in new cover crops on additional acres and to get his cover crops in earlier by supporting him with some equipment purchases. So we're working on about 18 parcels in the watershed on about 300 and almost 350 acres of land. Next. And let's do the next slide, please. Okay. Took a little long, some big photos there, sorry. So why the interest in no-till and soil health? We've got farmers where we've tested infiltration rates on older practices, 20 years of cover crops and no-till. And the infiltration rate can be 3 to 5 times faster than conventionally tilled ground. That has enormous impacts. You know, we will need less Hibernia dams if all of our cropland is infiltrating ground 3 to 5 times faster. So reduced runoff, reduced flooding, reduced erosion, healthier streams. Next. And then in addition to putting cover crops on new ground, the idea of just getting them on earlier is really an emerging and significant opportunity. So here's Jamie Hicks with doing something unconventional. He is driving through his soybean field, broadcasting cover crop seeds before he has even harvested the beans. Most farmers would wait till they're harvested. This is to get the cover crops started earlier so they can do better work. Next. And sorry for the blurry photo here. The cover crops on the right are established about 2.5 weeks earlier than those on the left. So getting the cover crops in earlier means they'll just do a better job of protecting ground. And what we're not seeing is all the work of the roots under the ground, building soil health and soil permeability. So I think that takes me through one more, and then Brian, I'll let you manage how much time we have for Q&A.
David, there are 2 questions in the chat. Do you want to read those, or?
Sure, I can have a look. Can I talk more about how we get landowner buy-in? How do you get them to say yes? One of our significant points of buy-in is that we take on the maintenance. We tell them if they are willing to do this gold standard buffer, we will take on the maintenance, and they are not stuck with the cost and responsibility for doing that. A significant part of getting landowner buy-in is also communicating a vision for what it is you're up to. These buffers really are critical to stream health recovery and for any possibility of habitat recovery for whether it's invertebrates or whether it's brook trout or whatever else. So there's a sales pitch to be made, and there is a need for articulating what Stroud has been able to show about the benefits of forested buffers. And I'm in a unique position based on my organization to carry that message. I will say the generosity of the landowners is also critical. These are people with a conservation mindset. That's part of a legacy in the immediate area. And the fact that we can do this at no cost to them for the install and no cost to them for the maintenance is significant. David Shields has a question. Are you putting stone at the ground or are you digging down a bit? Dave, we have done this two ways. One way is to simply mow the grass short and put it down over top of short mowed grass. And where we have reed canary grass, because that is so aggressive, we've actually been herbiciding the immediate area, a one-time herbicide application, and then putting the stone down after that. So if you have a purist who absolutely doesn't want any herbicide, the jury will be out whether putting stone over top of reed canary grass is going to work. But we're not excavating any soil or scalping the sod or anything like that. And then, what is the hauling method for getting the stone there? The first projects we worked on, it was 5-gallon buckets, and my arms were longer at the end of the day than when we started. The last project we did, the 50 acres, the contractor scratched his head for a while, came up with a small tracked skid steer with a bucket on the front. And he drove down the middle of a row of 2 trees, and we had guys on shovels each side going down each row. Took them about 18 seconds per tree when the stone is that close to put the stone on that they needed to do. So we dropped our cost on that big site down to just over $2.50 per tree. So I usually budget for $3 a tree. That's still a big cost savings from the $8 for the herbicide. We do have one site where the surrounding landscape is so steep and the construction in the area has created fill material that we could not haul 18, we couldn't get triaxles of stone down to the site, and we're actually having to rethink, can we do that site with stone? Do we have to wait till a different season? Can we bring it in from the southern end where it's a more gentle grade? So there will be challenges.
David, I'm going to transfer the screen to Martha. One more question if you want to take it. I want to thank David, Corey, and Craig, all of which had other commitments this morning. So thank you all. Thank you, David, for your presentation. So one more question, and Martha, I'll stop screen sharing so you can pull yours up.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any more questions.
Awesome. Great research.
Okay. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Thank you. We're going to leave Kennett Square. We're going to get back on the Magic Bus, and we are driving to Wilmington, South Bridge, South Wilmington area. And Martha is our presenter. Thank you so much, Martha. It's all yours.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Martha Narvaez with the University of Delaware Water Resources Center. This is not my project. I'm very interested in it. We had hoped that RK&K, who is a project engineer on this project, could have joined us, but their project manager was on vacation, and they sent me some drone footage. So I thought I would just kind of give you guys a teaser for the project. And as Brian and I discussed, it's definitely on our list for going the next time we can actually be in person. I just wanted to bring this map up so everyone could see the area. For those of you who were on the tour, I think it was maybe 3 years ago, we visited the site. The project hadn't been started yet, but if you can see South Walnut Street here, we sort of were right about here where my cursor is, and kind of looked in to the project site. And Leah from the city of Wilmington gave us a really great overview of the project. What I want to emphasize is this isn't a new project. So the Southbridge community, which is right over here, has been suffering from flooding and extensive damage for many years. There was a planning process that actually began as far back as 2006. And originally this idea for this natural space and wetland retention came from the community. In 2010, the South Wilmington project was actually formed. The big deal was, sort of in the project history, was in 2018, the city got close to $3 million, $2.9 million of a federal grant from NIFWIF and NOAA to actually work on the project. And then construction began in June 2019. So it's been about a year since construction began. And the idea behind the project is to create a stormwater management facility that'll reduce the flooding in Southbridge and create an open space. So I know when we were there the last time, they talked about the boardwalks and the landscaping and the access to the site. So it's not just a wetland area, but it's also a place where people from the community can go and walk and enjoy nature. The project will restore 14 acres of degraded wetland to a high functioning freshwater tidal wetland in South Wilmington. And like I said, it'll include a trail system. And it will significantly reduce combined sewer overflows and stormwater backups. So there is a sewer separation project that is part of this overall project. So I am going to show you the drone footage. So you can get an idea of what the site looks like. And this drone footage is from June of this year. So this is coming in from sort of the view from Walnut Street. And as the drone flies closer, you'll start to see the Christina River. This site is just west of where the Brandywine and the Christina split. And this site is adjacent to the Christina River. For those of you who are familiar with Wilmington, the riverfront and restaurants and all of that are on the opposite bank of this project, a little bit further. This is a little bit further downstream than actually where the Christina is. So you can see in the background where the Christina is.
Martha, I can't see it. I don't know if other people can. This is Andrew.
Okay. Let me stop sharing and then I'll reshare this. Sorry about that. Okay. Let's try this again. Can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. There you go. Thank you, Andrew. So that's the boardwalk that's been put in place, obviously. And like I said, this is coming in from Walnut Street. And then in a bit, you'll see the Christina River in the background. So the idea for this project is to concentrate the water in this wetland area. And so pulling it out from the community experiences flooding in their basements. You can't walk in the streets. And it's not just on big rainstorms. It's really any rainstorm they experience flooding. So the idea is that this will retain the flooding. So I'm going to show you one more thing. Can everyone see that? So this is the this is the modeling that RK&K shared with me, which shows the top piece is before the project, and the response of the system when it would rain. And so you can see, although the flood depth is low in this before picture, it is really spread out throughout the system and into the neighborhood. And this is based on the impact of a 10-year, 24-hour storm. And then you move down to this second part, that the second modeling piece, where it's showing you the impacts of the same storm after the wetland park and separate storm sewer system is constructed. And the depths are much greater, as you see, but that is going to be contained within that wetland part that they've created. And there's a 2.1 million gallon reduction in combined sewer backup, which is a 99% improvement. And there's a 12.1 acre decrease in surface flooding, which is a 96% improvement. The current status is that it is almost complete according to RK&K. And so I'm imagining that they have some remaining planting and stuff to do over the fall. And then I just wanted to make a small note that the city of Wilmington won the government award from the Water Resources Association of the Delaware River Basin for this project. It was supposed to be presented this fall, or this spring, I mean, but obviously there wasn't an event. But the city has received several awards. They also received an award from the Coalition for the Delaware River Basin as well. So this project is really impressive. It's a lot of time and money has gone into it. And so I imagine if you're able to get down into Wilmington the next couple months and take a look, it's definitely something worth visiting. So, all right, that's all I have for now. If anyone has any questions, I'll try and answer them.
Any questions for Martha?
One question, Martha, and maybe I should know this, but when is it going to be accessible? Because it looks kind of cool.
I imagine when it's complete, but I don't know. I asked Larry Trout from RK&K, and I said, is the project done? He said it's almost complete. So I haven't been down there recently. It's kind of hard to find. I tried to go to a ribbon cutting for it. I drove around that area for 20 minutes and couldn't find it. So you have to know where you're going to find it.
Have you heard of any feedback from the community?
I haven't. I think it's one of those things where they're pretty happy that something's finally getting done. I think a lot of times people in the city feel like they're planned to death with, you know, different groups coming in and studying what's going on and studying the problems. And I think this is probably something where they're very pleased that something is being put in the ground and action has been taken. But like I said, they've been flooded for years, and this concept is, you know, from 2006. So
Hi, Martha.
years in the making. Hi, Tom.
Hey, I just wanted to say this is so fantastic. I remember being on the bus tour when we got the sort of the plan of it, and seeing that aerial of that boardwalk was just I was like, wow. And talk about environmental justice. I mean,
Yes.
Some of you may not know that in the 1980s, in another lifetime, I was a WHYY TV reporter, and I used to be in Southbridge every year with the manholes just flowing, you know, water coming out everywhere. The Holloway family, 2 generations of elected officials tried to deal with this. And it's just so fantastic. I just wanted to say that. Congratulations for everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, for putting that into context. It really is a project that's long overdue in a community that's been trying to get someone to pay attention for a long time. And so it's really impressive to see it and see how you have this like oasis in the middle of the city.
Great. Well, I think it's definitely worth a trip for either a future task force meeting or a bus tour. So thank you so much, Martha, for pulling that together. Really appreciate it.
I had one more question. Has that, since it's been in a mostly completed state, has it gone through any flooding, big flooding, like the last rain we had?
Yeah, I imagine, because that footage is from June, and we had those 2 massive storms in the beginning of August. I don't know what happened. That's a really good question. I'd love to find out. I imagine RK&K might have visited the site, so I could follow up about that.
I wonder, because the reason I asked was across the water there is the governor's walkway, I believe. The other planning, I was the contractor there, and we were there for almost a year, and we had 2 or 3 storms, and it pretty much washed away totally. It looked like it was in an establishment period, and they used a lot of plugs. I was wondering how it's maintaining its establishment period through these tough, stormy times we're having.
That's a really good question. I'll follow up.
Thank you.
If you wanna leave your email address in the chat, I can get back to you.
I'm actually going to run down and check it out. I haven't
Oh, okay.
been down there in years. So
Yeah, it's a neat area.
And you're right, that needed it, and that's great. First I heard of that project. Thank you.
Sure.
I know, Chris, that for our projects, that vegetative state, when you've got everything in the ground and there's the most vulnerable if you get a storm, it's really tough. And you just kind of roll the dice nowadays. You don't know when that's going to be.
I remember watching 600 carry a Japonica float down the creek, float down the river after 2 days of planning right across the creek there.
Wow. Thanks again, Martha. We're going to now jump in our bus and do a short ride over to SUEZ. So we're going to get in Vanna White. Tom, take it away. I control the slides for you.
Thank you very much, Brian. I wanted to give a quick shout out to Corey and David Wise that my magic bus, Vanna White, spent the night with my family in Hibernia Park some years ago, and we really enjoyed that recreational opportunity and to catch some fish in that reservoir. It was absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyed it. We at SUEZ in Delaware are kind of like, living embodiments of the old adage that what happens upstream does not stay upstream, okay? We are at the very bottom of both watersheds, Red and White Clay Creek. Our treatment plant is located right at the confluence of the Red and White Clay Creeks. So we take 2/3 of our water from white clay and 1/3 from red clay. So that's how I just wanted to initiate in your minds where we come from. So Brian, if you could start us off with changing to the first slide. Here's just the numbers, the tail of the tape of SUEZ globally. There's the, think global and act local. Well, we do that because we are a global environmental services company, but we act locally in many different locations. You can see that 92 million people with water. I know you can do 2 things at one time. You can read and you can listen. So the word SUEZ obviously goes back to the canal in the mid-1800s. Yes, the first thing this company did was with a private-public partnership, dug the SUEZ Canal. And I like to say it's been innovating ever since. And I've been here for about 14 years here in Delaware. So we can move on to the next slide. And to our North American footprint for SUEZ, our headquarters is up in Paramus. I like to say Paramus, New Jersey, because it just sounds so much more, powerful. We have 15 total utilities that we own and operate. We have about 65 contracts with different governments and cities and towns and counties across the country. And we have 24 what we call advanced solution service centers. That's our water tank service that we provide to many municipal governments to kind of give them the ability not to have huge budget outlays every 20 years, but rather have a flat figure every year so that they can make sure that the tanks are in good shape. So we can go local now. The next one, tail of the tape, is basically here in Delaware. We're in the blue. And we have about 55 square miles that we serve, 100,000 people. Average day is about 15 million gallons these days. And it's about 5 billion with a B, 5.5, that we supply every year. And we have, as you can see there, the tail of the tape, 21 elevated and ground storage tanks and 17 million gallons above ground and about 75 million in our aquifer storage and recovery which, as Jerry Kaufman knows, was part of the governor's A-list of projects coming out of all that hard work that was done in the early 2000s, with a total storage capacity of 92 million. And you could drive, if you put every pipe of ours, end to end, you could end up in Myrtle Beach because it's about that distance from here. So anyway, that gives you a quick idea of how much pipe we have. And we can move on to the next slide. And speaking of that pipe, as everybody knows probably on this call, or maybe folks don't, some do, some don't, that the American Society of Civil Engineers and the EPA say that it's about a $1 trillion issue in our nation. Every 2 minutes somewhere in this country, there's a water main break because of the aging infrastructure. And we were hopeful 3 years ago there was supposed to be infrastructure bills and there weren't. So how is that pipe being replaced? Well, we put about $26 million in the last 4 years in replacing delivery pipes. Like many other water providers in this country, a lot of pipe was put in around the turn of the last century. A lot of pipe put in post-World War II with the housing boom, and that's all coming, to a point where it's at the end of its useful lifespan. And we've tripled our investments in recent years to try to keep pace with the aging of the infrastructure. And we can go to the next slide, Brian, if we would. So the biggest project in the last year in the watershed and at SUEZ Water Delaware is about $20 million being invested there at our Stanton Water Treatment Plant. The Stanton Water Treatment Plant is our 30 million gallon rated plant. And it's again in Stanton, Delaware, just outside Newport, Delaware, south of Wilmington. And we constructed two 2 million gallon treated water storage tanks on site. That's a 5-fold increase from what we had before. We also installed a 6,000 square foot pumping facility with brand new pumps that can do 24 million gallons of drinking water a day pushed out into the system that I described, 55 square miles of it. And we were able to, a lot of the pumps that were in the plant were when they were first purchased, they were state of the art, but they're now at the end of their lifespan. And with the new technologies, we're able to reduce our carbon footprint, the equivalent of removing about 120 cars from the road every day by putting in the new pumps, not to mention the huge jump in reliability. And we were very hamstrung here. I mean, the plant is amazing. 45 minutes is all it takes from us pulling water in from the Red and White Clay Creeks to turning it into drinking water and pushing it out to the 100,000 people that we serve. I think it's amazing. I give our treatment plant people a lot of props because, you know, when you pull water from a reservoir, I say it's like riding a pony at the Wilmington Flower Market, okay? If you're pulling water from the Red and White Clay Creeks, it's like riding a bucking bronco at the rodeo in Woodstown, literally. I mean, the CFS can go from 100 to 3,000. We saw that. The turbidity, the amount of suspended particulates can go 10, 20 times up, literally. And we have to deal with all of that and turn it around and make it into safe, clean, reliable drinking water. So I call them pump jockeys. They're way more than that, but they're doing a fantastic job. So this gives us the ability, if something happens at the plant, we now have 4 million gallons sitting there that we can continue, we can fix whatever happens at the plant and can continue to serve our customers, right? Because before, if something happened at the plant, it was very hard to continue to serve customers and fix whatever was going on. So beauty of the plant is we have one of them and it creates a lot of water. The downside is if it goes south, what do? This gives a huge buffer and reliability increase. Also gives a water quality increase because the contact time, they call it in the water business, of the disinfectant, the chlorine, is much greater. So it saturates the water much better before it's sent out to our customers. So that's the most significant investment in this plant in this century. The end of the last century, we invested about the same amount of money in the treatment plant that was originally built in 1946. So we can go to the next slide. I don't bore you any further. I've become somewhat of a water geek and a water nerd, over the 14 years I've been here. So one of the other things that we're doing and investing heavily in is technology. When I first started here, gosh, and even as much as recently as maybe 10 or 8 years ago, we were reading our customers' meters once every 90 days. That's amazing, once every 90 days. We are installing advanced metering infrastructure right now, which basically sends a signal from the meter at everybody's house to an antenna on our water towers. There's 4 of them throughout our system, that information comes to us, and then we can provide it back to the customer. And they will be able to get hourly updates on their water usage. And this is the 5-year program. Very expensive over 5 years, but it's an amazing use of technology. And let's go to the next slide, and we'll talk about some of the benefits, because it benefits the customers in a number of ways, and it benefits the environment in a number of ways too. The customers will get their hourly usage readings. Remember, 90 days down to 1 hour. That's amazing to me in a decade. Shows how much change we're going through. Also, very early leak detection, because people may not know they have a leak, and it's amazing how fast a running toilet can make you pay $1,000. Literally, I had to do it. It also helps the customers measure their savings from water conservation efforts they might be putting into place. You know, we found that if somebody gets some devices and puts them on and they could see a change, it really increases their likelihood to continue to care about it and continue to do it. If they are not going to see a change for 3 months, they may not even remember they put the thing on, right? So that's a huge, I think, environmental benefit. Also, our customer service reps can have the data right at the fingertips, and the greenhouse gas emissions also are reduced because we don't have to roll trucks. We will not have to roll. Right now, we do remote meter reading trucks that are able to pick up in 1 day what it used to take about 3 weeks to read electronically. This is, again, electronic reading, but it's going to all be continuous and perpetual and seamless, and we don't have to roll any trucks, no gas, no emissions. So we move on to the next slide. So we, up north of Wilmington, we built the first new ground storage tank in 50 years up, I don't know where, the Delawareans, so the Delaweenies on the call, you will know probably where the Pepsi plant is on Governor Prince Boulevard, Lee Boulevard, in that area. There was a 20 million gallon reservoir there that we inherited that was built by the Pennsylvania Railroad. It was built to provide water for the steam engines. And quite frankly, a lot of today's drinking water treatment plants on the East Coast previously were used as water treatment plants for railroad travel, for the steam engines. The farther you can push the water, the farther you can push the trains. When steam went the way of the dinosaurs, they became drinking water plants and provide fuel for commercial, industrial, and residential development. So the Edgemoor Reservoir was very problematic, 20 million gallons in the water, but we really couldn't use it because we didn't have the kind of pumping capacity. There was no downward pressure. I mean, most folks probably recall that the reason you have above ground water tanks, especially the elevated ones, is to give you water pressure at your house. You have millions of gallons of water, hundreds of feet up in the air in these tanks. The downward gravitational pressure is what pushes the water to your house, gives you your water pressure, and why you have water when the power's out. So this tank is about a 3 million gallon tank. It cost a little over $3 million to build. We were able to decommission the reservoir and put this in place to better serve the customers in our North Wilmington system. Next slide, if you would, Brian. So talking about our elevated storage tanks, I think mentioned at the beginning, we're up to 21 of them. This was a presentation I put together near the end of last year, and now that the 2 tanks at our treatment plant and that tank up in Edgemoor have come in service, and another one in another location, we have 21. And we do utilize our own advanced services division of SUEZ to have contracts with them to maintain these. Every 20 years, these are multi-million dollar assets, right? I call them silent field giants. They stand in communities and they just do what they do. And, you know, after a while, people forget they're even there. But without them, you turn the tap on, it wouldn't come out. So they have to be maintained. They have to be updated, again, like the Hibernia Dam for modern safety, right? OSHA requirements and so forth. So we have a contract that does all of our tanks over a period of years. We just finished probably the most viewed tank that we own is the Tri-State Mall tank on I-95 when you go north or south. It's been refurbished, and it's a real beautiful site now. No longer says Tri-State Mall because, quite frankly, there isn't much of a Tri-State Mall anymore, but we'll go there later. Okay, next slide if you would. So turning to the sort of environmental portions, I mean, this is probably the most rewarding work I do. For me personally at SUEZ, one of our 4 SUEZ core missions and is listed in values is environmental concern and stewardship. Most folks on here are familiar with our work with the White Clay Creek watershed. Obviously, we focused on the red and the white clay first and most, because that's the source of water we use to serve our customers. And then we sort of broadened it out from there. The Brandywine Red Clay Alliance, we've had a long and very fruitful and positive relationship, a number of projects, both in the white and the red clay, Delaware Nature Society, PDE, Christina Conservancy, and we had a watershed control plan in place for 5 years. We're still sort of doing that plan, but it's no longer, it's more of a maintenance function now to reduce a particular type of microorganism, and we've attained those levels, but we're continuing to do projects as well. So we can go on to the next slide. One of the ones that I have the most fun with is the partnership with the Delaware estuaries, freshwater mussel restoration effort. We have in 1933, the first predecessor company started that's now SUEZ in Delaware. It was Wilmington Suburban Water Company, and it started in the Bellevue area, and it started using the 80 million gallons of water that rushed into the former quarry on Philadelphia Pike, just north of Bellevue State Park. That's how most quarries die. They hit groundwater and they run. And so that was utilized as the very first source of water for the very first customers of what is today SUEZ Water Delaware operations. It has not been used as a source of water for quite a long time, but it is there, and we are working with the partnership in Delaware Estuary to let them use it to grow mussels to the appropriate size. These are freshwater mussels that many people may know, most endangered species of animal in the United States. And they used to be millions of them, and they used to sit in the water and filter out things. Well, it just makes sense. If we can get these natural filterers back in the waters that we use to serve customers, and they can filter out a lot of that turbidity before it gets to our treatment plant, we have to do less with the water. Everybody benefits. So that's one of the and I get a chance to go fishing up there every time I have the scientists come in and measure the mussels. So I'd say 1,500 of those mussels over a period of 3 years we've grown there, and there's floating grow baskets. Those are the blue ones that float. All they do is sit, eat, and grow. I'd love to be able to do that job. So we're really pleased to be able to provide that location. They have a number of other ones across the region as well. And we can move on to the next slide. And I did mention the watershed control plan. It pretty much ran a 5-year course. It started in 2012, and a number of you might see yourselves in the slides there. That's Dave Ascott in the sort of upper right slide up at the Hoops Farm, addressing one of the bus tours that we did in the past. Bob Struble is well familiar with the lower two slides on the left. It was a horse farm. It was actually featured on WHYY TV 12, which was nice. And that was kind of those two slides kind of are pictures that I used in our newsletter, kind of explained a little bit about relaxing the stream banks and putting in vegetated buffers. So we can move on from there. And one of the things that I kind of worked out with the DNS folks is we were very pleased to be able to provide funding to erect permanent sort of environmental and conservation signage down at the DuPont Environmental Education Center, which I'm also very pleased to say is served by SUEZ. SUEZ Water serves the water at the Environmental Education Center, because Wilmington could not get the railroad's permission to put their pipes through the railroad line. So we have water mains on that side that are not really for residential or commercial use, but we were able to tap into them and provide water so that building could be built and open and serve 60,000 people before the Markel Trail. So I'm not sure what the numbers are now, but it's great to be a partner there as well. We can go on the next slide, if you would. And there's a financial benefit. I know this is mostly an environmental call, but most people don't realize the water companies own a lot of ground. All the water lines, all that property, right, is taxed by the local entities, in this case, Newcastle County. So that's about what we contribute a year in property taxes to Newcastle County to do a lot of things the county does for, police and fire and paramedics and all those types of things. But the school taxes, it's over $1 million every year. We're very pleased that we're able to support through those taxes the schools in our area. The Brandywine School District is one of the largest ones. They have 16 different schools. We serve 10 out of the 16. The city of Wilmington serves the other 6. And so that's sort of a tail of the tape, if you will, on the financial remuneration that also helps the community that probably most people don't think about. It's almost like drinking water itself. You know, people don't think about it until it doesn't come out, looks funny or it tastes funny, or, you know, and then they think of it. But so I think we can go to the next slide, which is pretty much the concluding slide of the presentation. I hope you've learned a little bit more about what we do down here at the bottom, and I'm very thankful. We are, SUEZ is to partner with all the organizations upstream whose work cumulatively increases the quality of the water before it comes to our intakes, so that the more you do there, the less you do in the treatment plant, and everybody benefits. So that's my presentation. I appreciate the filling in, and Brian, I appreciate the invitation. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those questions.
Hey Tom, it's Sana. Can you kind of explain kind of the operations in terms of the red clay, white clay, and the reservoirs and the intakes, and how they operate? So if you're taking from hoops or in stream, can you explain those operations a little bit?
Sure. You know, as I mentioned, we're right at the confluence of the red clay and the white clay. We have 3 different intakes, one on the white, one on the red, and one after they combine. Okay, 3 different intakes for the treatment plant. We do have an agreement with the city of Wilmington. If there's a drought and we need more water, they will release water from the Hoops Reservoir because it is in the red clay watershed. Okay, and then that water will come down the red clay, and we will pull that water in and use it to make drinking water from in times of drought. Good news, I'm knocking on water, is we haven't had to do that once in the 14 years I've been here. Now, I'd like to think it's because we've had lots of rain all the time. One of the realities is that we have about half of our water that we produce actually goes to industrial customers of SUEZ Water Delaware. And we've lost the Claymont Steel plant. We've lost the Edgemoor DuPont titanium plant. We lost Formosa recently. I don't think anybody's upset about that, in my personal opinion, from their environmental record. But the Chrysler assembly plant was ours as well. So every time, you know, the offshoring of American jobs has actually put a lot of reduction in revenue on our side. And why do I mention that, and why do we care? Well, from the residential customer side, you know, residential customers, we still have the lowest water rates of any investor-owned water utility in Delaware. And I actually pay the city of Wilmington more per month than I would if I was a SUEZ customer and I live north of Wilmington, but we'll go there another time. The reality is that the industrial customer revenue kind of offset and sort of subsidize the residential customer revenue. It still does, right? But not to as great a degree. I hope that helped a little bit. I know your question was about the red and white, and I hope I answered those questions and the hoops releases.
It does. Thanks, Tom.
Sure. Either I put everybody to sleep, or, you know, I just was so incredibly detailed, nobody has a question.
There's a question from David Shields in the chat. He's
okay.
asking,
Can you talk more about SUEZ's investments in upstream water resources protection work beyond the Hoops farm? Well, we have probably completed something on the order of 25 different projects. Some of the ones that come to mind. The investments upstream were originally primarily driven by the reality that the U.S. EPA in the 2010 timeframe, they decided for the first time ever to make you test the source water, right? Not just the water that you deliver to customers, but the source water you pull into your plant. And one of the things they required you test for is something called cryptosporidium, which is a microscopic organism that comes out of the south end of northbound cows, okay? And we have a lot of ag use upstream from us. That's probably why we exceeded very slightly the US EPA's regulation on cryptosporidium. And so we had a toolkit a toolbox of approaches that we could have used. We could have spent $20 million literally on UV or other water treatment to do the same kind of reduction in cryptosporidium that we were able to do for about $700,000 over a period of 5 years by working upstream with groups like Brandywine Red Clay Alliance, White Clay Creek, all the different groups, DNS, to reduce the source of the cryptosporidium. And most of the source comes from ag use, mostly cows, as they produce the most crypto, and they're mostly in Pennsylvania. So that's what we've done. The Walt Moore Farm, and folks up there are familiar with the Walt Moore Farm. We worked with the Brandywine Conservancy, did an $80,000 project to completely replace a manure lagoon that was failing. And what was happening was he was forced to, pump the water out prior to the ground thawing, and he was right at the headwaters of the White Clay. So with the new lagoon, he doesn't have to do that anymore. Great landowner relationships already built by the Brandywine Red Clay Alliance and other groups. We piggybacked on the back of those to do a lot of these projects. So I'll be glad, Dave, if you want to reach out by email to give you some more information on individual ones. I mean, we've done everything from rain gardens with educational signage to the Hoops Farm, which is probably our premier, largest one. Worked with Stroud to do research on, what was the impact of our work, for instance, at the Hoop Farm. Very hard to quantitatively analyze, but the reality was they were able to use their DNA testing for crypto to tell you where it came from, and they didn't find very much bovine crypto after the project was done. So they found all kinds of different animals had contributed, if you will, but not cows, and they were the #1 source. They're like a cow can put in 1,000 times more than almost any other animal. So I hope that
Thanks very much, Tom.
Too much.
Thank you, Tom. We have appreciate your presentation. We're going to use the rest of the time to travel back north into Chester County. And I'm going to actually jump over to the Myrick Center. So thank you, Tom, so much for your presentation.
Got it.
Okay, so Brandywine Red Clay Alliance has 2 projects. One is on Plum Run, and one is a Bio-swale project. And I'm going to do the Bio-swale first because that's the newest one. And it's a biodetention swale project at the Myrick Conservation Center. It's right behind the beautiful Browning Barn, just on the north side of the road. Nice hiking trails over there, by the way. A lot of people don't realize we have some nice acreage and trails there. And if you look at the aerial photo of the site, this is North Creek Market, 842, the Myrick Conservation Center where I'm sitting now, and then the Browning Barn. This is where we installed the biodetention swale, the tributary that goes to the Brandywine. Not a big footprint, but you'd be surprised how this sloped field created an erosion issue. On the ground, it doesn't look like much. It was, I understand, a hay field. Now it's mowed seasonally. This hillside of our neighbor's property, our own hillside, and then half of kind of a small barn. Those downspouts run into our property. And a couple of years ago, Bob STRUBLE, with I think the help from the Conservation District, installed a small detention basin with an outlet structure. Good use of some geotextile fabrics here to create some stability here. And that took care of the water issues here. However, we continued to have erosion where that water came across this slope here. And we tried different things to control it, but we just kept getting this erosion in here. And so we talked to the Conservation District and Clouser Environmental, Dr. Aaron Clouser, and we said, why don't we try this Bio-swale concept, which is very much of a swale. The swale has opportunity for infiltration, slow the water down. We did soil amendment. In our case, we used sand and mulch. We want to encourage native plants that have strong roots to hold that soil. So the grasses that were there really weren't doing the job. And so we came up with a plan. And so here's that the slope here that's giving the water. Here's that one that detention basin, and here's where that pipe comes out. So basically, it's 3-step pools that feed one another. And these step pools, the idea is to slow the water down and collect water for small rain events like we had yesterday, and eventually release them into a rock swale where there was steep erosion into the stream. And so we brought on flyway excavating, and the first thing they started doing was to get the grades right and start to build that swale right behind the barn. This was done last September, so almost a year ago during this construction. The actual cells are 4 feet wide by almost 4 feet deep by 8 feet long. So pretty significant swales, 4 of them. This is more or less a rock vein like you would put in a stream. So this is looking downstream and the water rolls over the rock. This rock gives a surface that the water can flow over without getting the nick point and backwards erosion. So another way to control that fast-moving water. Here's another view. Geotextile fabric goes under those large rocks. This is basin number 2, I think. There's another basin here. Another view. This is actually the bottom basin. We had a trail to cross the area, so we came up with an innovative idea of basically a ford that allows the water to go over the trail, and we could still keep our trail there without building an elaborate bridge. So cell number 1, cell number 2, cell number 3. This is what it looked like at the beginning of October last year. So fully blanketed with erosion blanket, and we use Ernst conservation seed mixes. So we used a grass shade mix in here that, given the weather we've had, has grown in amazingly well. But this is the ford crossing. So this has heavy rock underneath with the lighter stone. One maintenance issue is this stone does wash away in lighter storms. It really serves to have a good walking surface so people don't have crevices. So we do have to occasionally replenish the light 2A stone, but the heavy stone remains at the bottom. On October 4th last year, we had our volunteer work day, and you could see we took the cells and we planted 450 conservation plugs, facultative wetland plants from North Creek, a variety of 6 different varieties, and volunteers were there. There's Andrew Holmesy. So he was with us. Andrew's one of our board members as well. So we planted those, and this is what it looked like on August 4th when tropical Isaias came storm. So I was here, and I'm going to try and play you a video of what it looked like. So I decided to go out in the rain and take a look at what's happening. So this is, I believe, the bottom cell. Let's see if this video is going to play. So this is me walking you through a rain event at the biodetention. So let's see what goes here. Are people able to hear the audio?
No, Brian.
Okay, let me see if I can get you audio.
We don't hear you exclaiming how wet you're getting.
Let me try and load this just real quick. Bear with me. I'm going to load it directly from the thumb drive. That usually works best. I see the problem. I'm muted. Hold on, just one more second.
Are you able to hear that now?
No video.
You need to share your screen, Brian.
Yeah, got it.
Is that Brandywine granite behind you there, Martha?
I think so.
Beautiful.
And
Slide them out.
Brian, when you share your screen, when you click the green button, make sure you check the box at the bottom that says share computer audio, and we should be able to hear it. Should be on the bottom left to that first pop-up box. Kind of very small down there. And then you can also do the optimize.
The water works its way to the second basin. Here at the second basin, is August 4th, and we're planted wetland plants. Again, the cardinal flower.
I've got two playing at once now. Just bear with me,
Yeah, you
please.
sound like you're competing with yourself.
I got them both playing at the same time. My apologies.
I thought I was the only guy who walks out around my property when it's raining to see whether my water diversion projects have worked.
You're definitely not alone there.
Oh my Lord, North Wilmington clay.
All right, here we go. And now I'm not hearing it. Yeah.
Can't see it.
Do we have audio?
Neither one.
All right, I'll give it one more shot, and then after that, we'll just move on, okay?
I'll start singing in the rain in a moment. If it doesn't come up, that'll get us to move on.
I'll tell you one thing, I got really wet doing that.
Oh. Hmm.
All right, one last try here. Hibernia Dam, where did that come from?
Today is August 4th, and we're inspecting a bio-swale that was installed about 10 months ago here at the Brandywine Red Clay Myrick Center behind the Browning Barn. This area takes stormwater from the hillside behind us, a couple of acres stormwater, and it was making a gully here before it enters a tributary to the Brandywine. And what we installed are 3 step pools that are designed to retain the water for infiltration and during a storm event allow the water to go through. So the water comes from a small detention basin, and you can see we're getting probably over 2 inches an hour of rain right now, and it comes quite forcefully out of the pipe. And yet, through sheet flow and the vegetation, the water continues to run clear, and it gets to the first bio basin, which is now growing nicely with wetland plants, including some cardinal flower. And from here, it flows over a rock structure into the next basin, where this is smaller rain, it's infiltrating the entire way. And the water works its way to the second basin. Here at the second basin, we've planted wetland plants, again, the cardinal flower, iris, and you can see the water is overflowing into the third basin. And the water is really building up a lot of speed now as the rain continues. The groundwater is saturated. So this basin remains here. And then we built a ford where our trail crosses. And you'll see where once this was actively eroding, we're putting clear water into the Brandywine today. And so from here it flows down to a tributary where it flows clear. And we've achieved our goal of preventing erosion and allowing the water to make its way during storm events through. And were this a 1/4 inch rain, the water would simply fill these basins and they would evaporate or soak into the ground.
Okay. All right, I got the message that time you heard, but you did not see. My apologies, a little back and forth. So what I'm gonna do is I'll take any questions. We're gonna save Plum Run for another day. We've been there before.
Are you hearing me now? So my apologies, best laid plans. I'm gonna take questions and I am gonna share one last time and I'll play the audio, the video maybe without audio, and you could at least see it. But the bottom line, what we were trying to show you was, I was really pleased that during that big storm event, that water ran clear and there was no erosion. It did overflow the infiltration bed, which was what was planned, and then it flowed crystal clear, and it was a gully rusher there. So any questions about the Bio-swale project?
Brian, it looked fairly wooded. Did you have to cut down trees to for the grasses and other plants to survive?
Well, we probably should cut down some of those walnuts. No, we didn't take very many trees out. It's kind of a walnut, you know how they have those sort of walnut groves with a lot of stilt grass and grasses underneath. I think it would probably help it to dry out and get better vegetation if we took some walnuts out.
Walnuts also are allelopathic, so they'll suppress other vegetation.
Yeah, that wasn't helping us any, I don't think. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to save Plum Run for another day. We're all out of time. We've been to Plum Run a couple of times. We finished phases 1 and 2 at Tig Farm. Would that be okay with everybody? We'll do that for another time?
Yeah.
All right, great. So any other questions or comments for the